Olá, sejam muito bem-vindos a mais uma Trends Interview do nosso IDC FutureScape 2021. Desta vez vamos falar da nossa visão do Future of Digital Innovation. Este tema também tem o seu FutureScape. Tal como todos os outros temas que estamos a aproveitar para partilhar durante esta semana, existem 10 previsões que os nossos analistas identificaram como sendo aquelas prioridades dos decisores das organizações de todas as indústrias para os próximos 5 anos, e alguns destes tópicos nós vamos explorá-los com o nosso convidado, o analista da IDC. Este tema da transformação digital alinhada com a inovação tem sido uma das discussões que temos lançado ao longo dos últimos anos, para clarificar que a transformação digital é essencialmente uma visão de transformação do negócio. Logo, a inovação digital para a IDC tem sido muito clara como um mecanismo de inovação de negócio, de aproveitamento de oportunidades e também para resposta àquilo que são as ameaças à continuidade das organizações. Também por isto, a IDC, ao longo dos últimos anos, vem falado das tecnologias como aceleradores de inovação, precisamente para dar esta ideia de que se as organizações, os seus negócios, têm de ser os principais, os primeiros interessados em inovarem os seus processos, inovarem naturalmente os seus negócios e transformarem os seus modelos de negócio em última instância. É por isso que nesta discussão nós vamos dar continuidade a muito do que já vínhamos falando, esta aceleração da inovação, e vamos introduzir naturalmente isto que foram estes últimos tempos e de que forma é que afetaram estas novas previsões da IDC. Conosco, it's a pleasure to have Massimiliano Claps, Research Director da IDC. Welcome, Massimiliano. Welcome to Portugal.
Great to be here, Bruno, even if only virtually.
Okay. It is always a pleasure to have you with us. So we will discuss about some of our trends. Every year we discuss about this innovation. There are new topics related with the innovation across all industries, and I would like to start by discussing the topic that no one wants to talk anymore, but the COVID. What happens in terms of what were the main impacts in your perspective of this last year in the vision that IDC was coming with this sense of multiplied innovation? How this multiplied innovation was a challenge, or what were the impacts that you saw in the last year? What were the changes?
Yeah, I think COVID just accelerated a few things that were already happening, right? And if you think of the traditional concept of digital innovation and rapid deployment and working in a more agile manner within the IT shop, with COVID, it became even more clear that the same paradigm, the same approach needs to be extended to the business innovation, right? So if COVID makes more urgent to deploy hybrid workspaces where I can work from home, be in Portugal 1 hour, and the next hour be in the US for a phone call, all in a secure manner, or if an enterprise needs to replace their traditional brick and mortar delivery channel with digital delivery channel and go all digital with their services and commerce, or if they need to collaborate with suppliers and partners to deliver new products, to innovate their operations, everything becomes more agile. So all of the paradigms that we've been talking about in the IT shop, about DevOps and Agile and citizen developers, are now relevant paradigms in the business context as well. And we need to work in that more agile manner, in that more collaborative manner, always focusing on the outcomes for the customers that we are serving.
As you mentioned, that concept of the IT shop, somehow in the IT area, this sense of the client, the business areas, the line of business being the clients of the IT, transformed the way we organized IT in a very client-centric, even if the client was internal to the organization. Nowadays, we are not discussing mostly internal. We are actually discussing about the changes not because the organization wants, it's because most of the times the organization needs to adapt to the ecosystem. And one part specific of the ecosystem that I think is very interesting is this sense of we will organize ourselves according a little bit more with the journey of the clients. How is this impacting, understanding the journey of the clients is impacting the way organizations do the innovation?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, as you say, the boundaries between the IT shop and the business, or as we used to call it 10 years ago, IT supply and IT demand in the enterprise, have blurred completely, right? And digital is embedded in the business innovation. And therefore, the two are working hand in hand. Sometimes the technical specialists take the lead, sometimes the business specialist takes the lead, but they always need to be there together to transform the enterprise. And as we said earlier, the guiding principle is the customer journey. It's about the preferences, the needs, the context where the customer will consume a certain product or service. It will be about behavioral change and the ability to test those ideas and those innovations in the context of the customer and then scale them quickly to an entire segment or adapt them for a different segment of customers will be very important. And here comes the importance of digital and platforms, where the modularity of components, the microservices, the containerization of connecting data across different systems is relevant, because it's only with that modular approach that the innovation can be accelerated and delivered to the customer in a relevant manner.
Okay. Most of the times when we in IDC discuss about the FutureScape, it gives a little bit the feeling that we are always discussing one step ahead. For example, most of the innovation that organizations made in the past years was very, very centric in the internal processes, very aligned with the sense of the Porter vision of value chain and organize the processes, being more efficient. And some years ago, we started discussing, no, please start thinking about products and services. You need to be focused in products and services. But the thing is, nowadays we are saying, no, this is no longer products and service centric. Now it's people centric. So what is the evolution from from product centric to people centric?
I think the evolution is in delivering value, right? So the point about focusing on the people is not that because we are passionate about a single persona. It's not because we are at this stage in terms of the enterprise world and also the public sector. We're not able to personalize to the single individual. It's about articulating the value and trying to understand what is the value of delivering an augmented experience to choose a fashion product, or what is the opportunity to use a chatbot to deal with a customer service request for a utility, increasing the efficiency of a billing complaint, for example. So it's the value for the people that matters, and the value traditionally was encapsulated in the business processes. Then the value was in the product itself, in something tangible, or in solutions, as we used to call them in the IT world. And now the value is generated at the point of interaction with the customer, the citizen, the student, depending on what industry you're in.
We see lots of these use cases related with this digital innovation, kind of a sense of an extended value chain, right? And in Portugal, I still feel that organizations have some difficulties in understanding the value of the ecosystem and how to really collaborate with the ecosystem. What are the main challenges that you see and the main opportunities that can help organizations to better understand and collaborate in the ecosystem?
Yeah. Well, you made a point about Michael Porter's and value chains and supply chain, and when I was in university, we were used to study those things, right? And at the time, the world was very linear, right? It was supplier, customer, maybe an intermediary. Now the world is not linear anymore because the value is produced at the touch points with the customer, with the people. Those touch points happen across an entire network of stakeholders. Think of the case of mobility or transportation, the passenger economy, if you will, right? The touch points of somebody commuting to the office in a COVID safe manner will be, first of all, with the car, going with the car to maybe a subway or a train station. And then the touch point will be with the mass transit operator, so the public transit operator that manages and operates the subway, that has to do the ticketing and provide some scheduling information and safely take the person to the destination. And then once arrived at the destination, there could be another touch point with, for instance, a micro mobility operator that offers a scooter or a shared bike to go from the destination station to the office, again, in a safe manner. So all of these touch points are relevant in the mind of people, of the customer, of the end users, and the end users will see the value in integrating all of those touch points. And in the back end, the ecosystem needs to make those connections invisible almost, right? And that's the challenge. And again, I think mobility is an interesting one. It's very fast changing. You cannot impose technical solution from the top down anymore. It will be about open exchange of data across multiple platforms. Think traffic data versus car maker data versus payment and ticketing data as a kernel for rapid innovation and deployment and scaling of new services. I hope that answered the question. It's a little bit of a long-winded answer, but it's an interesting topic.
No, and one of the things that we keep, you talk about the back end and having some kind of platform to connect with all those touch points. And most of the times organizations think that when we discuss about digital platform, we are discussing about my digital platform or my partner digital platform. But actually we are discussing this kind of a common digital platforms, most of them enabled by the cloud. Can you remember any specific case when organizations could collaborate not in my systems, but actually could deal with this ecosystem governance, that is managing some assets or technologies that are not from any specific company, but from a context based on the cloud? Do you remember any good example to share?
Yeah. I think it's important to notice that in these ecosystem operating models, there's not one silver bullet, right? There are innovation labs, there are workspaces and communities for developing new services, there are marketplaces, and in each of these examples, you generate value in a different manner. And if we stick with transportation, think of open mobility data and organization like Transfer for London that have made available through APIs their data about schedules and timetables and routes and so forth and so on. And on top of that, hundreds of developers have invented new services. Or you have marketplaces, like in the manufacturing sector, there are a number of manufacturers that are connecting their clients, suppliers, and partners. I was talking today with somebody about Polymore, which is about plastic and recyclable plastic, and re-injecting the recyclable plastic and compounds into the manufacturing cycle. So all of those examples are supported by cloud, whether it's an hyperscaler or a private cloud, it doesn't really matter, but cloud enables to take into account the ability to scale, enables rapid innovation, and gives easier access and better ability to govern the data and the identities in a federated manner for those ecosystems.
One of the main challenges that I see in this year's FutureScape was when we look to FutureScape, and I imagine our clients looking, oh, it's about the digital innovation, let me read it. And then we start to see words like apps, APIs, code, DevOps. And we remember a little bit that sentence that was, every company is a software company. How do you see that organizations are dealing with this challenge, or to be more similar to a tech company nowadays? How is this actually moving forward? Companies are dealing with it?
Yeah, well, they're struggling with it a little bit. Many of them have plans to become somehow software companies. And again, in mobility, you have Volkswagen. In sportswear, you have Adidas, Under Armour, and other companies that have taken ownership of digital innovation and brought in some skills and created a roadmap to hire even more to keep the ownership, precisely because digital is embedded in the business innovation. Digital becomes the business. Instead of digitally enabling legacy business processes, we are reinventing processes. So it's important for enterprises to own. It's a cultural shift, it's a paradigm shift. It's not just about technology. And technology in the cycle where we are helps, because there's a lot of things coming to market, like intelligent automation, AI, chatbots, API, and containers have all matured over the past 5 to 10 years, and they're now converging to make it possible for enterprises to own their digital innovation. But it's not easy. We may be creating the next generation of legacy at the same time.
Yeah. Because some of the names that you mentioned are those big companies that are basically fighting in this M&A business of buying big companies, for example, analytics companies and so on. And they are understanding that there are challenges regarding the skills gap and the access to the talent and so on. But when you are a small company, you cannot obviously buy these technologies. And most of these topics, what I hear in Portugal is like, but we are just a small, medium company. We cannot deal with those topics. What is the recommendation that you have to more small companies that obviously can't buy these companies, but need to have partners that help them to move forward?
Yeah. So a couple of things. First of all, a lot of these tools are out there in the cloud, and small companies don't need to get overwhelmed, right? They can start small. They can look at some specific requirements that they have, depending on the business issue. Always start with the business issue at hand that they need to solve. Don't be intimidated by the commercial cloud providers, for instance, or the software providers. Always try to see what the options are. And the second thing is, particularly in within the context of the countries within the domestic market, there are always experts, equivalent SME that are expert in digital and IT, that are eager to collaborate, that are eager to focus on the local requirements, that understand the regulation, that understand the characteristics of the business. So engaging with those specialists locally and asking them for a solution for a business problem is always the best starting point, rather than trying to understand all of the technology that is out there.
Most of the times we are discussing with our clients about strategies and architectures, and one of the main topics of the architecture is most of the times build versus buy, right? So at the same time that we say everyone, small business, for example, that you can trust your partners, you can work with your partners, we kind of feel that companies are sending sometimes too much to the partners. In this balance of build versus buy, what would be your recommendation, if there's any, to, okay, try to at least keep this inside and not sharing, because once upon a time was, this is the business, this is the IT. And now it's sometimes, oh no, this is my company, this is the external partner. So in the build versus buy, what would be your recommendation to organizations?
Yeah, so I think a couple of elements. It's a super interesting question. The first one is that the old dichotomy of build versus buy got more nuanced with the cloud, because now we also have a subscribe or rent option, right? So, and the rent option within certain limits, it's not totally elastic, as somebody says, but within certain limits, you can switch it on and off. So you can try something, maybe waste some money if the project doesn't go well, but you can stop it. You're not committed for a 10-year system integration, big super mega project, right? So that's the first element. The second thing is in your map or in your metrics of what you want to keep in-house, anything that has to do with the core business is still relevant, but even more relevant, it's becoming what it has to do with the data and with the intelligence and the ability to apply intelligence to process efficiency, to reduction of risk and fraud, for instance, in financial services, insurance, payments, government. So data is super, super relevant and becoming the core business. And it's not just about the fancy AI and chatbots, it's also about data governance, right? Applying the data governance principles, using the data in an ethical manner, protecting privacy. So I would say the area of data has become a core competency that enterprises need to keep inside.
Most of the times when we say that data is important for innovation, to support innovation, there's a kind of a conflict with people that think a little bit like in the past, that when we say data, they keep thinking that the competitive advantage is related with the secrecy of the data. But we are talking about ecosystems with lots of transparency, the importance of having this trust around the ecosystems to share more data. Are you seeing the organizations losing a little bit this, that the secrecy of the data is the competitive advantage, to the vision that no, is that having access to more and more ecosystems of data that is the real critical success factor?
Yeah. So I think there is still a big chasm to cross, as they say, right? There is still a big gap in terms of understanding the value of opening your chest and sharing some data and getting access to data. Where the technology suppliers can help in having enterprises embrace the concept of trust is actually in giving control, right? So it doesn't necessarily matter if you're sharing some data, if you're accessing data beyond the boundaries of your enterprise, as long as you understand how that data is being used and by who, for what purposes, and how you can realize the value of that data sharing. So that's why I was saying it's not only about the fancy AI algorithms and machine learning, it's the data governance aspect and being able to control how the data is used and in what context is what will bring many enterprises to a higher level of trust in this idea of ecosystem collaboration.
There's always a vision that when we discuss about innovation, we have to discuss about new things, okay? The new things, the new business models, the new use case. But in IDC, I just love our use cases and our model of use cases. And this year in the FutureScape, we talk a little bit also about reuse. Use what is already proved to be applicable in your industry. What would be your suggestion to organizations across all the industries to use IDC vision of use cases, programs, strategies, missions to accelerate this moving forward when they are preparing their new digital strategies?
Yeah. I think what I like the most about our framework of use cases is the idea that you can plot them on a roadmap, right? So it doesn't really matter if you've heard about this new bright and shiny new technology called digital twin, for instance, if you are a construction company or a real estate company, you want to understand when that digital twin will be mature enough to make a business impact. And based on that, you plot it onto an horizon that says, well, these are the things that I want to do now because they will determine my efficiency and revenue this year. These are some of the things that I can incubate and start investing in. Maybe I dedicate some of my internal software factory to work on the project. And then there's a third horizon of the bright and shiny new things that I may fall in love with, but they're not actually mature, and I may observe for the next couple of years. And based on my appetite for risk, I then bring them into the roadmap. So that idea of an horizon and how that horizon maps with the business impact of technology within each use cases, I think it's super useful to prioritize investments.
Yeah, most of the times what I see is when people talk too much about the Horizon 3 is because they don't want to start working with the Horizon 1, right? It's because they always want something new, and they don't start doing what is already available. So one of the challenges, and we are coming to the end of our time, the first prediction that we have this year, and is a topic that I really think the concept of innovation need to be understood like that, is that innovation is not only fancy things and things that will be an opportunity. This is a question of survival, right? So we have a name of a prediction that is DX for survival. Innovation is not fancy things. It's about survival of your organization. You want the organization to survive the next 5 years. In order to do that, it's good to survive until the end of this year, right?
Yeah, absolutely. As we say, you always have to have your eyes on the future and your hands in the now. And it's difficult to do because you require a different set of skills, a different set of cultural construct, a different set of organizational structure to be efficient now, to deliver and scale on the innovations that you're already confident with, and at the same time, experiment with what's coming in the next horizon and maybe in the third horizon. But it's in the nature of the next normal, definitely after COVID, that all enterprises have to deal with. And it's part of what technology is also enabling us to do, to accelerate the pace and to bring the two seemingly separate side of the story together.
I think the word normal has this tension of the normal will be the calm down, right? And when we think about the next normal, sometimes people say, when this will come down. But it's not about this. So if you can explain in 1 minute what is the IDC vision of the next normal, it would be great to explain that the next normal is not the slowdown of the world around us, right?
No, it's not the slowdown. It's about more volatility and uncertainty. And in that context, it's even more important that enterprises work together, because not a single enterprise in the traditional linear value chain can possibly deal with the complexity that we have right now. So it goes back to the ecosystem, that discussion that we had earlier is about bringing digital and business together within the enterprise, opening your chest to the complexities, taking some risks, and collaborating with external partners while having transparency and control of how the benefits of that collaboration are being realized by the different parties.
Yeah. So using one famous quote, probably the only thing that will be normal will be change, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So at least there are things that don't change. That is always a pleasure to talk with you, Max. So it was very nice to have this quick conversation with you. Thank you very much for your feedback, for your insights. Everything else people can find in our FutureScape of digital innovation. Thank you very much, Max.
Thank you, and looking forward to do this live next year.
Okay. Muito obrigado a todos pela vossa atenção. Tivemos uma visão do analista de IDC sobre os desafios relacionados com esta inovação digital, o futuro da inovação digital. Já de seguida poderão ver alguns dos nossos parceiros a falar das soluções precisamente para responder a estes desafios. Muito obrigado pela vossa atenção.